I think what I didn't recognize is that money was changing how people treated me in terms of what they thought they could get out of me. It was suddenly having managers and agents who saw dollar signs, or adults who treated a 6-year-old like a business asset rather than a child.
Welcome to Living Not So Fabulously, where unfiltered truth meets your bottom line with just enough sparkle to pay those bills. So, David, our 20s were messy, but thankfully our 20s were well before social media, and we certainly didn't do it under the studio lights with millions of people watching.
Yeah, that would be take a lot of soul searching, maybe even a whole new podcast about it, or maybe publishing a book to overcome it. Which brings us to today's guest. Alyson Stoner is a multi-talented actor, singer, and dancer who grew up in the spotlight as a Disney Channel star and the scene-stealing kid in Step Up and Camp Rock. Beyond the screen, Alyson voiced Isabella in Phineas and Ferb and danced alongside icons like Missy Elliot.
I don't know really how you top Dancing with Missy Elliot, but Alyson is also an outspoken advocate for the rights and mental health of child performers, the host of the Dear Hollywood podcast, and the author of the new book, Semi-Well-Adjusted, Despite Literally Everything.
Welcome to the show, Alyson. It is so good to see you again.
Such a kind intro, and so lovely to see you both.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, so growing up in Toledo, which is where we're at right now, and then entering the entertainment world at the age of 6, when did you first realize that money could change things, especially the way people treated you or maybe you and your family?
Interesting. Well, my concept of money felt pretty divided because my parents were divorced, and on my dad's side, our home was much smaller and more modest furnishings. And then when my mom remarried my stepfather, he clearly had access to more money, and he had a higher position in the company. And so I think subliminally, I was recognizing that money is some kind of lever. But what's interesting is we didn't speak about money. So it was more so obscured from view, and all I saw was the outcome of what money could do. But something else that comes up working as a child performer, answering this question from a different angle, I think what I didn't recognize is that money was changing how people treated me in terms of what they thought they could get out of me. It was suddenly having managers and agents who saw dollar signs, or adults who treated a 6-year-old like a business asset rather than a child. And the entertainment industry teaches children that their worth is tied to their earning potential, and that can create quite a warped understanding of relationships where love and belonging and financial value become intertwined.
I remember, thinking back to when I was a kid, there were certain people or certain families, I always felt like it was a treat to go over their house because they had things that we didn't have. And I knew that there were other people that came over to our house and they must have been feeling the same way, right? And we were kind of in the middle there. And we started to make judgments about, this family is better than us, right? At least that's the kind of feeling I had inside. That family, they must be better than us. We're going to take just a break here, folks. If you're just tuning in for the first time, this is Living Not So Fabulously, where we mix real money talk with a dash of glitter. We're speaking with the multi-talented Alyson Stoner, who just published their first book, Semi-Well-Adjusted, Despite Literally Everything. And if you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment below and share an illusion about money that you held as a kid, or maybe you even still have today. So you've talked a lot about this illusion of being a Disney kid, right? That it meant wealth, it meant security. What was the reality of that? What were the real finances, especially during maybe those peak years compared to what maybe other people think it's like during that time period in your life?
Oof, well, buckle up for this one. For starters, of course, there are hierarchies on set, so not every kid on the same show is paid equally. If you're a lead, but you're not the lead, that the show is named after, for example, it's very likely that you are not making an equal rate. But the next thing is, a lot of the labor we do as artists and creatives is unpaid. So, unpaid work and publicity are really the backbone of the creative industry, which easily filled more than half of my schedule. And it can sound very ironic, but instead of making money, oftentimes we as artists are spending money. There are hefty out of pocket costs to keep the machine going, to continue building momentum in hopes that if and when you do secure that larger opportunity, it'll profit a higher salary. But to be specific, a partial list of expenses could include a $3,000 to $12,000 monthly retainer for a publicist. Some are more than that. A $6,000 to $10,000 monthly retainer for a fashion stylist and glam team, which some of us are thinking what I was thinking. Listen, I'd rather wear hand-me-downs every day. But when you're in specific spaces in the industry, it's actually kind of forced onto you and mandatory to have to take on a cost like this. Then if you have your regular voice training, that can be $2,000 a month. If you have updated headshots or you're getting coached for auditions, you start, tacking on all of these additional expenses. And then on the flip side, keep in mind, a lot of this is just for you to try to get a job, so you're not being paid while you're doing this. But once you do book a job, they often do not amount to a living income, not only because of the infrequency, but also because your team and the reps and all the folks around you are going to be commissioning every check. So in my case, growing up, somewhere around 35% of every check was going out to a team, which means at most, after taxes XYZ, I had maybe 30 cents to a dollar to then pay for all of those other business expenses we just mentioned. And I was often left wondering, how does anyone make money? And, what I didn't realize at the time is that this experience of being so willing to work without any compensation really warped my understanding moving forward as an adult when I was in new business spaces, new career fields, and realizing, oh, I'm just volunteering myself to help build this company, and I'm not even thinking about the fact that I have to pay rent. And so that kind of extractive nature without fair compensation is something even into my adulthood I'm having to really sit with and adjust how I set rates, because trust me, the illusion of wealth in the industry, especially thinking that the artists are the ones who are making money, is often not the case. If anything, what we're paid in is the currency of attention and visibility. And trust me, that does not pay your utility bills.
Right.
As an outsider, you just think like everybody who's on TV is just rolling in the dough. We have this conversation with Don Lemon. We just thought everybody who's an anchor or who's on TV, on CNN, MSNBC, whatever, they're just all rolling in the dough. And it's so enlightening to realize like, oh, all these people that we put up on pedestals are struggling as much as any of us. I mean, who's making all the money in all these businesses?
Right. That's the question.
Well, and that's the important question to start asking, and for us to explore all of these cultural myths surrounding money that are affecting all of us, no matter what our location is in the ecosystem. And when we reify these myths and we buy into the pedestal of celebrity culture, actually, the audience at home is being played to a degree. You're being told that you need to look up to someone in a way that leads to you spending your dollar on them. Now, this is different from if you encounter an artist who you truly want to just support. Yes, absolutely. Pay artists, invest in art, yes. And when it gets commercialized, now we're looking at a much different dynamic where all of us are on this chessboard. And my hope is that in reading the book and exploring money myths, we start to understand that we don't have to just be pawns, that we can actually find some agency in how we navigate the system.
Yeah. But hold that thought, Alyson. We'll be right back after this quick break. Welcome back to Living Not So Fabulously. We're talking with actor, author, podcaster, and creator of all things, Alyson Stoner. So I want to pick back up with this idea that you were just mentioning before the break. This idea of us gaining agency. You have been very open about the things that you have had to deal with because of being a child actor, or at least the way that affected you. Things talking about eating disorders and burnout. What role did money play, or the financial pressures in all of this? Did that play because you didn't feel like you had agency over making decisions or taking control of certain situations?
I appreciate you asking that because oftentimes we'll focus on mental health outcomes or other domains of life, but really a major driver of why I was working constantly was because I had to earn 2 to 3 times my living expenses just to make enough after commissions and taxes and business expenses to pay rent. So, had I had a different financial structure or a different understanding of financial literacy, or I had been introduced to things like business planning, I would recognize, okay, if you've got all of this going out, eventually at some point, you've got to have a strategy for something coming back in. And what does that look like? And which parts of this do you own? Which parts are shared with other people? And how do you make all these numbers work? And so I was actually very, very, very frugal, probably contrary to what people would assume from a lot of child performers. I absolutely was not pursuing luxury. I did not want a lavish lifestyle. I wouldn't even let myself buy an extra pair of socks. I was pinching pennies, and that also speaks to the reality that we are often mostly actually unemployed as artists. So unless you're constantly hustling and finding ways to resource yourself and book work, then you're actually not going to have a steady income. We don't have the, what to me feels like the beautiful gift of a real salary. We are gig workers. And so we have to think about money differently and be, oftentimes very frugal about decision making. Now, that doesn't mean everyone is. And so for a lot of young performers who are propped up and maybe given access to a great degree of wealth early, but aren't guided in how to steward that money, you see a lot of really unfortunate experiences from their own, of course, spending and perhaps misspending, but also others taking advantage of them and exploiting their financial status. So money, the thing that we often, don't talk about, really, it's still always the elephant in the room. And I'm glad your show exists so we can just put it out there and speak plainly.
Yeah. Well, thank you for demystifying some of that, right? I would never have thought that you needed to earn 2 to 3 times what your living expenses are so that you can actually cover your living expenses. That would, we talk about this idea that 30% of your money should be going to housing. That's just housing for the rest of us, right? You're talking about all of your living expenses. You only get basically a third of that, or maybe close to half of that. It just really, it shines a very not so pretty light on Hollywood.
And that brings me to a question. I'm curious, like you already said that on the set, there's like this hierarchy. Like if you're not the lead title in the show, that you're not getting paid as much. Is there sort of this sense in Hollywood that when I reach this level, like when I get my own show, then I'll be comfortable? And then when you get there, is it like, okay, well, now I got to be like, I don't know, maybe I'll be like Britney or Justin and then I'll be comfortable. Or maybe I got to wait till I'm Meryl Streep. Like, is there this constant sense of like, I've got to continue to climb until I reach who's comfortable in Hollywood? At what point are you like, I've made it. I can actually pay my bills and not stress at night?
Well, I can share some statistics. So actually, only 2% of actors are able to earn a living solely from acting. That means 98% of us have other jobs just to make ends meet.
This is news to
2%.
America.
Wow.
This is news to America.
Yes.
I'm stunned. Okay.
And it is definitely not news to all of us who are packing 7 to 8 people in a 2-bedroom apartment in the middle of Hollywood. And sorry, and please repeat your question.
At what point do you feel like you've arrived? Like, when do you stop stressing about money because you're making enough from your career? Huh?
Well, I think some of the other absurdity about all of this is that as you make it, your expenses just continue to become exponentially greater and greater. And that's not uncommon across other industries or, pursuing certain positions in other fields. And I think we have to ask ourselves, what is enough? And if we're just actually inviting a great deal more of work and stress, and there's kind of a law of diminishing returns at a certain point. What is really driving us? What are we truly after here? And so for me, as I shifted away from entertainment, started pursuing becoming a mental health practitioner, while I still have a foot in the door in entertainment, I'm still on some animated shows, I'll absolutely show up as a mental health coordinator for productions and sets. I also recognized I actually get to trim so many expenses off of my budget by shifting into a different field. Now, granted, I'm going to have to do different certifications and training programs over here, but I won't have to give commissions to up to 15 different reps on every single check. And so had I entered the industry as an adult, I do wonder if I would have stayed as long. But unfortunately, I was 6 years old. And when you're entering the industry, a lot of times business managers and financial folks will explain to you just how complicated the structures are for entertainment in terms of expense tracking and are you going to be an S corp and what are child labor laws and the Coogan account and da-da-da-da. And you're encouraged to not ask questions and just let the experts be the experts. You focus as a child on performing. Even though at 13, I tried to go through a financial literacy course just because I wanted to understand money, it didn't apply to my unique circumstance in the industry. And so even at 18, when I was given access to the funds that I had earned, I didn't have a grasp for what to do with them. And so thankfully, I have some folks in my family who were, trying to be supportive from the front. But I also did not get out unscathed. And, if you read the book, you'll absolutely see quite a big plot point around money in my life.
Yeah, it's interesting when you were talking about that scenario of it being overly complicated and explaining the complicatedness of it, if that's a word, complicatedness of it, kind of does make somebody cower and back away. That really opens the opportunity for abuse and all of the things. It does make me think about financial advisors sometimes, and everybody thinks that investing is so difficult and hard, and that has opened up the door for financial advisors to do things like churn their clients' accounts so they make more money off of commissions than really the client needs, and that's why there's laws and protections. Actually, speaking of that, there was recently something in California, I think last year, right, about protections for child actors, right? And you've been an advocate for
Digital
this.
entertainers, I believe. Yes, there are a few states who are stepping up to create policy protections around young performers in traditional and digital media. However, at large, child labor in terms of entertainment is actually exempt from federal protections. So at the moment, we're requiring states to step in. And I think there are still 17 states who haven't even passed a single law to protect child actor finances, let alone kid influencers. And by the way, when I say kid influencer, I know it can seem like a silly term if you're not acquainted with the industry, but this is actually an $8 billion industry. And there are a lot of young folks who don't even realize what's going on, but they're being filmed for content that then gets monetized by families or brands or other folks. And rarely does the child have the best case scenario where they're fully protected. So we're absolutely working with lots of representatives right now to see what kind of federal protections we can put in place. And this fall, I believe we'll be introducing a bill. So, keep your eyes peeled. Keep your eyes peeled and know that, these are real vulnerable children. And the lines today are becoming blurrier and blurrier. These are not necessarily kids who are trying to be professional performers. Sometimes it's just kids trying to have everyday moments, but now they're captured and shared online without their fully informed consent. So definitely, if you see bills and you have the opportunity to be in support of more protections, please make sure, do your due diligence, and then let's take care of the young ones.
So you have a wealth of knowledge in this space, right? Of your experiences. What is one piece of money advice you would give to someone, whether they're a child actor or not, entering the entertainment world? What one thing, or would you caution them to do, or one thing you would tell them to do?
I would invite people to look at the pie chart of their lives, and you could use the 8 dimensions of wellness as a framework if you'd like, and to recognize that financial well-being is one of the critical aspects of who we are as humans living in this system. And so if you find, I'll actually pull from an exercise one of our therapists at my company, Movement Genius, uses. Leah Mancow has us color in each section within the 8 dimensions of wellness, and we see how much attention each area is getting or how satisfied we are with each area of our lives. And you might start to notice, wow, I'm really giving a lot of attention to performance training, but it looks like I actually haven't been taking care of my social life, or I haven't been taking care of my financial well-being. And so I would just invite people to think holistically. Create a 360 game plan to the best of your ability so you know how to make sure you're tending to every area of your life and every part of who you are, including, I know, the practical and sometimes stressful aspects of having to make money and manage money in this world.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all of that. We really appreciate you joining us today, Alyson. Thanks for sharing your money stories. We appreciate you being authentic about that.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like what you see, please scan the QR code to follow Yahoo Finance Podcast for more videos and expert insight, because when you do, you're one step closer to living fabulously and financially free with none of the childhood star drama. Until next time, stay fabulous.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.